What's up, guys? Today we're talking about my spring cleanup playlist, where I go through some movies that I watched this year that haven't been featured on the channel. March was off to a depressing start, with it being tax season and Demi Moore being completely snubbed by the Academy, though I will say it was validating to the long-standing message of The Substance that the Academy made the decisions that it did. I've been left with a strange melancholy. So I want to talk about some movies that didn't make the cut for full videos but still deserve some love. And because I love a good list, here are 6 movies that will help cure those springtime blues or enhance that melancholy. First up is Didi, directed by Sean Wang. This has got to be the most beautifully shot coming-of-age movie and maybe the most moving. It stars Isaac Wang as Chris, or Wang Wang, or his various AIM screen names, who is experiencing an emotionally turbulent month leading up to his first day of high school. This movie perfectly captures that mid to late aughts nostalgia, dripping with that early Facebook font, MySpace top 8s, and AOL Instant Messenger. They even have the Smarter Child chatbot. While that era for me was more like finishing up high school, I still really resonated with Chris's constant fumbling of the ball in this movie. He's not perfect, he lies, and he's kind of an asshole, and he's figuring it the out. This is exactly how it feels to go from 8th grade to 9th. Nails it. No notes. It's pretty perfect. While I do have a qualm with the fact that Chris doesn't truly get redemption in that movie kind of way, and you do start to tire of his constant stumbling over himself over time, it's so realistic. And being that Chris is growing up as the child of a first-generation immigrant, you get a glimpse into what it's like growing up Asian in America. He gets the kind of thing a lot like, you're pretty cool for an Asian. There's a shot in this movie that is one of the most well-composed shots of 2024. Chris gets home and finds the house empty, eerily so, as it's usually filled with the sounds of his mom and grandma shouting at each other or fussing over him and his sister Vivian, who is played by Shirley Chen, putting in a tremendous performance as the sibling off to college. The director chooses to keep us framed here through the glossy kitchen window as we see Chris walk outside to find that his grandma has either fainted or passed out. That murky vision through the window is so succinct and crucial to the movie's overall message on growing up, experiencing grief, and making mistakes. It highlights the impermanence of shame and embarrassment in your adolescence, but more importantly, life. Special shouts out to Joan Chen playing Chris's mom, Chung Sing. There's this one scene in the movie where Chris's skater friends notice his mom's art, and when they speak to her and say how much they like the art, she lights up. Just heart-melting performance from Joan Chen. Plus, she's Twin Peaks alone. Greatest movie mom in history? Next up, we have Return of the Living Dead 3, directed by Brian Yuzna. For those in the Substance conversations last year, you probably heard this guy brought up along with his movie Society, so I was pretty excited to check out Return of the Living Dead 3. If you've ever wondered what happens when one person in a couple gets reanimated as a zombie, and what happens if those two people also happen to be head over heels in love, look no further than Return of the Living Dead 3. This is a romantic zombie movie with some incredible makeup and special effects, as well as one of the sexiest zombies I've seen on screen. The story of Return of the Living Dead 3 is a simple one, and kind of like a good comic book style passing of the torch, Yuzna takes the lore of the Return of the Living Dead franchise established prior and creates something in a completely different and unique style. While the movie is spooky and oozes zombie charm, at its core, it's a tragic love story. Kurt and Julie just want to make out and take off into the distance on Kurt's motorbike. But when disaster strikes and Julie flies off and ends up breaking her neck, kinda like that scene in Hereditary a little bit, Kurt scrambles, beginning to fear that his only lifeline and true love is gone forever. But when Kurt reanimates her using the substance established from the first 2 films, he sees his soulmates start rending the flesh of passersby and beginning a zombie outbreak. This movie just has a vibe, man. It's hard to explain. It's probably that early 90s feeling. It's very akin to the way that Bernard Rose made his movies like Paper House and Candyman. There's a searingly romantic graininess in all the shots. Not only that, but it's packed with this sci-fi action element as they've developed this weird frozen bullet gun. Sound effects and weapon design really aid in creating this specific atmosphere. Acting-wise, the standout for sure is Melinda Clarke as Julie. So pained in her monstrous transformation, and it was a deft choice to keep her so human-looking, which helped in developing this weird alien love connection between her and Kurt. If you're looking for a different spin on the zombie genre, or you're just looking for something sweet and sappy to throw on with your horror-loving lover, then Return of the Living Dead 3 will scratch both those itches. The person that bit me the other day, its bite's really acting up. Kneecap is an interesting one. Directed by Rich Pepiat, it's the kind of sort of backstory of how the real-life hip-hop group Kneecap formed in Belfast. It's frenetic, pulsing, and a little bit scattered. It's a movie that shoots for the stars, but doesn't ultimately get through the stratosphere that it aimed for. All the leads, who are playing themselves, do a great job and are immediately charismatic and likable. You really root for them, even if the movie doesn't spend as much time where you'd like it to, which is when they're making and recording music together. I understand that Ireland is historically a place of great political intrigue and turmoil, and that is integral to the story that's being told on screen, and important to these characters' own personal stories. But I wish the movie had spent more time in the studio with these guys. Those moments are cathartic, comforting, and fist-pumpingly fun. I admired all the creativity packed into the movie's writing, cinematography, and editing. They implement everything from animation, claymation, on-screen text, and it's visually appealing from start to finish. I also appreciate that most of the movie is in their natural Irish dialect, which adds an authenticity to the characters and their story. Hell, I was pleasantly surprised to see Michael Fassbender, of all people, show up in this movie. He doesn't do too much when he shows up, but his natural gravitas adds an additional charm to the film. I'm curious to see how other people reacted to this one. And while I don't think it's perfect, I would recommend it as one of the more creative and colorful pieces of cinema that came out in 2024, but it may have flown under your radar a little bit with all the other great movies that came out that year. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. This one's been on my watch list for a while. It sits up there with The House That Jack Built and The Devil's Rejects as a dreadfully comforting hangout film with serial killers. A young Michael Rooker is frighteningly captivating as the titular Henry, and as the movie opens, we see slow creeping shots introducing us to the sounds, terror, and carnage that he unleashes on his victims. But outside of that, Henry could just be one of those dudes you see at the bar shooting the shit and drinking beer. It just so happens that he kills people for fun and dumps their bodies in the river. It's disgusting, and his performance is just that, but for some reason, I couldn't look away. The movie chugs, and at 83 minutes, once the credits start to roll, you're left wanting more of its bizarre tone. Director John McNaughton caught several streaks of lightning in a bottle with this movie. Tom Towles puts in a great performance as Otis, who just recently welcomed his sister Becky into the apartment he shares with roommate Henry. Much of the movie is the three of them chumming around, connecting with each other. But while Becky sees some of the more wholesome activities, we begin to see Henry's influence take control of Otis. One scene in particular where they break into a rich family's house is haunting. As to Henry and Otis, this is just something to do. The choice to show this scene through a videotape that Henry and Otis filmed while they were killing this family, and they actually got that camera they used to film it from killing an off-market pawner, makes the footage even more harrowing to watch. It's a shocking film, not just because it's presented so nonchalantly in its violence, but because the director is kind of making the claim that the audience may view it similar to the characters on screen. That hangout quality makes it a pretty scary movie, even if on its surface it's presented so plainly. Rob Zombie was clearly emulating this film with his oeuvre. So if you have a penchant for this filmography and gritty grindhouse ilk in general, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer will be a great watch for you. Paddington in Peru, directed by Dougal Wilson, is the third of the Paddington films and the first to not be directed by Paul King. Paddington fans may have seen this change as a red flag, but fear not. Paddington in Peru Peru is still packed with the same marmalade-coated charm as the first two films. Some of the magic is missing in the movie, yes, but overall it is still a great, if not inconsequential, addition to Paddington's storyline so far. Not to mention, a feel-good, family-friendly movie is a good palate cleanser for my usual fountain of death, decay, and horror. The story is straightforward, but effective. Paddington gets a surprising letter from his Aunt Lucy, who's currently residing in Peru at the home for retired bears. Paddington, being the good chum that he is, takes off to Peru with the Brown family in tow. They arrive to find out that Aunt Lucy has now gone missing, which plunges them into a journey through the Amazon rainforest. It's colorful, it's hilarious, and it's still charming as all get out. And while the loss of Sally Hawkins is marked, Emily Mortimer shows up and does a pretty good job filling those shoes. Does anybody else know her as the woman with brittle bones from 30 Rock? With a magnificent third act, goofy performances from the likes of Antonio Banderas and Olivia Colman, and a penchant for genuine fun makes Paddington in Peru a hugely comforting movie experience. Getting to learn a little bit more about Paddington's origins only makes the movie more special. And spoilers, that orange grove is the stuff of legend. Not to mention that Paddington is technically the success story of an immigrant, and something that more audiences, both children and adults, especially adults these days, need more of in the movie theater. The Addiction is a vampire film from director Abel Ferrara. Lily Taylor plays Kathleen Conklin, who is a doctoral student who gets accosted by Gloria Annabella Sciorra, and subsequently becomes a vampire. It's a movie that's very flowery and obsessed with its own messaging, and is clearly an allegory for the AIDS crisis and drug addiction that carried over from the 80s. It's shot in black and white with some excellent and staggeringly beautiful cinematography, as well as some Jim Jarmusch adjacent moodiness. It's a movie that I definitely plan to rewatch, as some of the themes and script went over my head a bit as I chose to take in more of the dread and ambiance that Ferrara captured. Lily Taylor is terrific in the lead role, and her performance carried me through most of this movie. Christopher Walken is also amazing, and it was fun to see Edie Falco show up as Kathleen's fellow doctoral student. This movie has many things to say about religion, education, and philosophy, so that rewatch I am going to look forward to pick up on its themes more. And after this one, I'm excited to jump into Ferrara's filmography, because this movie was very interesting and moody, and definitely checked a lot of my personal boxes for what I like in movies. So if you're looking for a brooding, moody vampire movie with a touch of pretentious literacy, The Addiction is definitely for you. And that's the list. Whew! Feels good to get that closet cleaned out. Hopefully you check out these films and they cheer up some of those spring blues, or let you just sit in those beautiful showers of melancholy. Have you seen these movies? And if so, what do you think of them? Are there any that you'd recommend that are like some of these movies? Leave all the comments below. And before you go, don't forget to like and smash that subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching this video and continuing to support the channel. Until next time, I leave you with a quote from The Addiction. To face what we are in the end, we stand before the light and our true nature is revealed. Self-revelation is annihilation of self.